I ask Daniel to give us the invocation? Everybody can stand, please.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity we have to gather in this town hall forum to hear from the DA, and we ask you to give us knowledge and insight, Lord, and help us to be respectful and ask good questions, Lord. Just bless this evening, Lord, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Hey, would you mind?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So before we get started, I'd like to go ahead and do the introduction of first-time attendees, first-time guests. So let's start out with the first row. Nobody there, nobody there. And I think the last row, and would you mind, Dan?
Yeah, actually, I was able to make a week ago with Daryl, my brother-in-law, but it's good to be here. My name is Dan Hicks. For those that haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but look forward to seeing how we can work within the city and people for the city and then the county and then the state, help bring back a little bit more conservative approach to
So just for the air, just as a data point, Dan and I go back 30 years maybe, give or take, back in the Patriot days,
Yes, back in the 80s,
back in the 80s. So
a few times.
it was fun. How you doing today, Mr. Tucker?
Good, sir.
Anybody else that has been here just for the first time? Oh,
So I'll introduce my sister,
okay.
Lisa, who's here with us for the first time. She was actually the one that got me informed about this group and started coming. But my sister Lisa, and you all met Daryl last week, I guess.
Welcome. Anybody else? First time here? Yeah, I was off for 2 weeks, well, a week and a half. I went down to South Texas to visit with my dad. He was in a small accident, so, but I'm back. So, let me go ahead and get started with a couple comments. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Byers for being our guest speaker. He was our guest speaker last year, and he did a phenomenal job at explaining what is going on in this office, what's going on in the community, and a big issue for us is crime, public safety. So we decided to ask him if he could join us again, and of course he's been gracious enough to do that once again, so that's good. Couple just some data points. We had a meeting today. It was a good meeting with Athena Huckley. She is from the Ideal Option Drug and Alcohol Rehab. And one of the things, and this is more for the newcomers, the first time, we get involved, or we try to get involved in community issues. And one of the things that we hear very often is we need drug treatment, we need drug rehabilitation, we need, health behaviors, mental health treatment. And when we met with Athena today, we were rather surprised at some of the comments that she made. Because one of the things that she said is, we don't have enough. So I'm just doing some thought process here as I listen to our council and occasionally the commission, but mostly the council, all they talk about, almost everything, every excuse for what's going on bad in the city is drug addiction, behavioral health requirements. But yet when I talked to this lady today, she's like, we can't get any help. We can't get people in. So one of the things that we're going to start digging into, and it'll be Julia's, part of Julia's charter with crime and public policy, and myself and Sarah and some of the others, is to explore and get a little bit smarter into what is happening in the community when it comes to this. Because we hear the politicians say one thing, and then when you start digging just a little bit, it just doesn't connect. And one of the things that I find very frustrating is that we have, in my opinion, we have political hypocrisy. they'll say what they want to say to make sure that everybody feels good and go away. And at the same time, when it comes to it, what are they doing? I mean, this is not a secret. I mean, we know we have a problem. And then, I think it was what, 1 or 2 or 3 weeks ago, when they had the budget discussion, and then they're trying to take money from the Telshore fund. And I'm saying to myself, we have this huge problem dealing with crime, public safety. The chief has stated various times that probably the most contributing factor to this type of problem is drugs. So here we're not doing more. And again, I'm just scratching the top. And I'm very ignorant in this particular area, because a lot of it deals with drug rehabilitation and, you know, not only just getting the individual to walk in the door and say, I need help, but there's a lot of small details that go around with it. You know, and one of the things that we discussed today is some of the folks that are requiring drug treatment, drug help, they don't really, sometimes they don't speak well, and sometimes they're incoherent. They don't run around with email, they don't run doing their thing. So once Latina, and she did a great job this morning at peeling all those topics down and just simply getting people to get help is not something trivial. So I'd like to encourage us, and I did ask Athena to join us in the near future, and I asked Beth to coordinate it so she can speak and tell us what's going on. Because I, for one, like I said, I'm very ignorant on that subject. And it's very important that we get a little more insight into what's happening. Any comments on that?
But I got a comment.
Yeah.
We've always advocated for intervention first instead of housing first. That's their mantra. Kerry Hamel, the senator, goes at housing first. So you put a drug addict, you put a house over his head, and that's what's going on in Las Cruces. The Desert Hope Apartments have drug addicts living next door to people trying to get off drugs, and that's what federal funding does. And it shouldn't even be in existence. Like, it's been going on for 2 years. We've known it for 2 years. So anyway.
No, it is, and that's why I say, when we hear the council talk, their whole solution to this is more housing. But there's more to it than that. So it is up to us as a community advocacy organization to, you know, better understand what's going on so we can advocate and pursue some hopefully good solutions. But that's going to be a long term. It's not something we're going to do overnight. One of the things I wanted to talk about too is, you know, there's a lot of, what do you call it? I'm trying to find the right word, but people running for council is pretty exciting. Running for mayor, everybody's like, yeah, we want the mayor, we want this. And I am not sure that in the community we put as much focus on the race for the district attorney. And when you step back, and I think CCIA has done a great job at understanding a lot of what the DA does, because he's been gracious enough to join us, and we've met with him and so forth. But I think that a lot of our local citizens, they probably don't really understand. It's a complex situation. And unfortunately, for those of you that follow the national level news, you hear that district attorneys in different cities, some of our progressive cities, I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying it is what it is. Okay, Seattle, San Francisco, LA, and guess who's driving the train with crime there? Or not, maybe not facilitating it, maybe not enabling it, but certainly they're a factor in it, okay? And this is where I think sometimes we don't pay enough attention, I'm not saying CCIA itself, into those type of races that are very critical. Because, and I mean, you see the news, and for those of you that read all the different news broadcasts and so forth, about what the negative impact that so many district attorneys have. So one of the things that we need to be really cognizant of is, are we getting our best, you know, individual in that position that is actually going to do the job that they're supposed to do instead of look the other way and just make things worse. And time after time after time, we have all heard where the quote, Soros-backed DAs, whatever that's supposed to be all about, at what's happening in some of the communities. So when Mr. Byers speaks tonight, listen to what he has to say. Okay, be very careful. When the time comes, ask the questions, because it's important that we, not only just us, understand, we need to make sure that our friends and neighbors also understand. Another thing, another telltale sign that I found is who is endorsing who, okay? And you may say, it doesn't really matter. No. Those of you that have been following local politics, you know darn well, those folks that sit on the dais, sit behind me, and at city council, if they pick George, whoever George is, there's a reason why they're picking George. And if you see one of our councilors that leans in the wrong direction, okay, and she or he are endorsing a certain candidate, ask yourself, why are they doing that? Okay, it's not chance. It's not because they have nothing else to do, or maybe they're drinking buddies. There's a reason for it. And that's part of the reason, part of the problem that we've had in the community is there's that type of intermingling, maybe that's not a really good word, but part of the reason why sometimes we don't move in that direction because of that one group mentality. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm paying attention to, trying to, is who's endorsing. Okay. One of the things that I definitely appreciate from Mr. Byers is that he is a Democrat. It's no secret. And he's willing to engage with us. And to me, that means a lot. We have invited all the candidates to date. Mr. Byers has obviously responded, did before. And Beth informed me today that I believe Ms. Booth is also going to join us sometime at the end of the month, which is good. It's an opportunity for you to ask those questions and understand what her positions are going forward. The forums have been good, but the one that I attended, it was very short, a lot of good sound bites, but not a lot of meat behind the answers. So here's an opportunity to ask Mr. Byers. And the last comment I was going to make, and I'm still working on this, and I think most of you are going to enjoy it. We're working on a billboard, and some of you have seen the proof. We're not there yet, but one of the things that really bugs the daylights out of me is not besides political hypocrisy. It's when it's okay for Beth, but it's not okay for Fred. Okay, and I don't like that. And recently, one of our counselors made a couple comments that didn't go very well, at least not with me and some of those others, dealing with one of the local establishments here in Las Cruces. Basically, there was no sympathy for one of the big blocks, when it came to crime. Well, you know what? That's not the way it works. And it's just as important as Fred is, as Mr. Tucker is, as anybody else is. And for when we have a public official that makes those type of comments, I'm saying to myself, what the heck? So if I'm a criminal, it's okay to go, raid Walmart or raid Lowe's, but we don't want to bother anybody else. That's not the way it should work. So if I have my way, and this will be privately funded, so it doesn't come out of CCIA, if I get this thing, it'll work. Hopefully it'll be up in the next week or so, and you guys are going to enjoy it. Any questions, comments? Okay, I'd like to introduce Mr. Byers. Beth, you want to do it?
Oh, sure. We have Mr. Attorney Gerald Byers.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Hopefully my phones won't go off while you're giving this presentation. Let's see, okay, oriented now. So I wanted to start and thank you, Mr. Garcia, for your kind comments, and thank you all for coming out this evening. Hopefully, can everybody hear me in the back okay? Speak up. Okay. There we go.
There.
That's right.
That's
Okay.
more better.
I was thinking about whether or not I should use that clip-on mic, but anyway, I'll just eat the microphone. Anyway, so here we go. I wanted to start by explaining that from my perspective, what I want to do is try to continually provide an update for you, right? Some of you have attended our prior meetings and gotten some information. Others attended the town hall that LCPD put on, and I was glad to be invited to be a part of that to share some information with you. So some of the slides that you will see have already been there, but it's important to understand for the purposes of a continuum, okay? Because a lot of times presentations are just little snapshots and it gives you little snippets. That's not enough. We need to know the entirety of everything, because as Mr. Garcia said, my impression of the information that you seek is you want to understand. You want to know what's going on. You want to grapple with the real ugly aspects of what it is that's driving crime in our community, what it is that is affecting how it is that we live in our community. And so that's what I'm here for. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to sway anything one way or another. I'm not going to throw anybody into the bus if they don't deserve it. Sometimes they deserve it, sometimes they don't. But what you're going to get from me is the unvarnished truth. And as I said in one of those candidate forums earlier today, telling the truth is not making an excuse. It's just telling it the way it is. Because I'll be straight up with you. Our criminal justice system in this state is far from working, and it's closer to broken. That is just the reality. Having prosecuted in Texas, I can tell you that there are so many problems with how our processes work. It is amazing that things happen. But because of the dedicated work of a number of people, a lot of staffers inside the courts, a lot of staffers inside the public defender's office, as well as the district attorney's office, and my God, thank them all of the law enforcement officers and the staffers in their organizations that keep things going. So I wanted to share that with you, just be transparent, straight up from the get-go. If you have any questions, please feel free. You can raise your hand. There will be a microphone that will be available, and then I'll be happy to stop and answer whatever your specific question may be. Also, just so you know what the layout is, I'm going to try to touch on a number of topics and provide more time at the end for just back and forth discussion. So I believe that anytime that we have a meeting that there should be open communication. And, oh my goodness, this is, hold on, let me mic up, I'm not, so, I'm going to start with not my favorite topic, bail reform. Bail reform was something that was put before the New Mexico citizens in 2016, and it was given as a constitutional amendment to give the courts, and this is supposedly what no, it's not supposedly what was said, it's what was said, to give the courts the power to hold dangerous people in custody that they did not have, that the courts did not have that power before. That amendment passed overwhelmingly. Almost everybody in the state voted for it because they thought that they were doing something good. Once the amendment passed and it became law, and then it was interpreted and put into a court rule, something very different emerged. And that something very different was a procedure which is codified in our court rules, which then requires the state to prove by clear and convincing evidence that there are no conditions of release that cannot be fashioned that would not prevent the defendant from coming back to court. The focus was taken from public safety and it was put on court attendance. As a result, what happened is that the courts interpreted that rule and their hands were tied, they had to follow the rule, and as a result we have individuals who would shoot their neighbors, kill, you got a couple, kill the husband, injure the wife, shoot her 6 times, and then he gets arrested, and then he gets put back out on the street pending trial. This was all under the rubric that the idea is that somebody who's in jail for unlawful possession of a motor vehicle or something like that, something relatively minor, wouldn't be languishing in jail for 9 months prior to trial. Well, everybody understands that that's a good idea, but everybody also understands that it's not a good idea that somebody who shoots and kills their neighbor should be out on the street. But that's what happens, and the name of the case is James Theriault. Real case, we prosecuted him, he's in prison. Next, we're going to talk about the pretrial assessment prongs, and I touched on this a little bit. And again, it's the dangerousness concept. You'll hear dangerousness one more time, and that dangerousness is in relation to mental health and that entire process. That is a different level and a different kind of dangerousness than you see in the pretrial detention context. So again, we're talking about the, and this is the primary issue, the 5-409 pretrial detention rule. You may have heard of something called the Arnold tool. You didn't really hear too much about it down here, but when the Supreme Court implemented its case management order in Albuquerque in 2017, over 8,000 cases were dismissed like that. Each of those cases had victims, but that didn't matter. So that is the impact of the implementation of some of these rules. And one of the aspects of it is something called a public safety assessment, called a PSA. Now, the first thing that I thought of whenever I heard about it was there's something not right here. And what I mean by that is that one of the rubrics of the PSA assessment, the public safety assessment, is that they would never recommend detention. So here's a management tool that is supposed to be used to inform the courts about the dangerousness of an individual who is going to be released or not released, put on an ankle monitor or not on an ankle monitor, and the organization that is making that determination, they shall not make a recommendation that the person is to be detained. Well, that sounds like a recipe for disaster, and it has been.
Mr. Clark,
Sir?
let me ask you a question. Since this subject comes up a lot,
Yes.
okay? I mean, you hear it all the time, the DA's letting everybody go, the DA's not doing anything. Can you amplify just a little bit more? And maybe some real cases that you can
I
share
can.
with us?
I definitely can.
Because one of the most controversial topics that I hear almost every day is the DA's letting everybody go.
Thank you for that. The question was, can I amplify on this issue about the DA's letting everybody go? And as far as pretrial detention is concerned. And let's back up a little bit. There's another slide later on in this presentation that will get into more detail about recidivists and the number of pretrial detention motions and everything else like that. And there will be great detail on that. But Mr. Garcia makes a very excellent point. And that point is this. There is a misunderstanding among the public about where the power resides to detain or to release. Yes, sir.
So, if I'm understanding you right, PSA is done by whom?
PSA...
Is that by the probation department? Who's doing this to the court? Who's recommending this to the court?
The question was, who does the PSA? And the answer to that is that there's an organization within the court that analyzes all of the information, and then they make that recommendation to the judges. It's not the probation department.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand. So it's that organization.
Yes.
Who gave them that power? Is it this bill that went through that
Yes.
gave them that power?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It came from another organization called the Administrative Office of the Courts.
Yeah.
And what they do is that they administer the function of the courts. They do the hiring and firing regulations. They do the money and the budgeting and things of that nature. And they also supervise these types of programs. And so to answer your question, those pretrial services groups are found within the district courts.
And so, and one more question, I'm sorry, I don't mean it. So basically, the only way to control this is the court has to tell the PSA organization, because who oversees it and who governs that? How do you rectify the problem? Because if you're describing that you've got a person who's making a recommendation, but the recommendation limits them to saying that you can't incarcerate, well, then who's to correct it?
You hit the nail on the head. That is the essence of the issue. It's unthinkable, it's unfathomable, but that has been the reality for a few years now. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but what I can tell you is that last time we met, we were hoping for a fix. The Senate created a fix. The Supreme Court has implemented a fix. So the good news out of this meeting that everybody should take away from it is that the parade of horribles that you just described, the Supreme Court has heard, and they've reacted, and reacted quite strongly. And thank God they did. Because honestly, I'm tired of seeing the revolving door. I'm tired of people with 5, 6, 17 open cases, and all of the associated nonsense that goes with that, and all of the danger and hazard that it puts law enforcement officers in. Because I can tell you from experience, been prosecuting going on 27 years, and every time there's been a situation where an officer's been shot, not every time, oftentimes the most dangerous individuals that officers encounter are people who have committed a heinous crime and they're on the run from the cops, and the cop doesn't know. So you have Joe police officer who walks up on somebody. I think this happened over in Tucumcari most recently. One of the very first ones that I ever encountered was there was a deputy, McKinley County Sheriff's deputy over by Gallup, pulled over a guy for speeding. He didn't know that the man had just committed murder over by McGaffey Lake. The guy shot Ron, hit him up underneath the vest. Ron unloaded with his 9 and emptied every magazine. Whenever help got there, which was sometime later, because there's nothing but out there but wide open spaces, Ron was still alive, and the guy who shot him was dead. But that's what has been happening ever since this flawed idea was put into place. And so, like I said, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I couldn't just leave that like that, because that is an extremely powerful point that you just made. So yes, let me go ahead and push on.
Can I just ask you
Oh,
one
yes, ma'am.
question?
Sure.
Who hires the administration? Who appoints them? Are they?
That's what I was asking.
That's what they- Okay.
The question was who hires these people, and so on. And what I can tell you is that I don't want to make light of it because we're talking very serious matters. But within state government, there is this entity called the Administrative Office of the Courts. It's led by an individual named Artie Pepin. He's a longtime attorney. As a matter of fact, whenever I was prosecuting in Albuquerque, he was at the AG's office, and he would take the cases that I prosecuted and he'd deal with them in the Supreme Court on appeal. Long-time administrator. But that entity is integral to the legislative process for the courts. That's the best answer I can give you, because beyond that, I don't really know. I've not been behind that door to see the Keebler elves, as it were. But yes, it's a state entity. They have to abide by state personnel rules. They have to do all of those things. But I believe it's administered by the New Mexico Supreme Court. But in any event, that's the best answer that I can give you. So there is a system of accountability there. Yes, ma'am.
So they're not elected?
Correct. The administrative, the members of the administrative office of the court are not. So let me proceed on. So let's take a look at pretrial detention motions. In 2023, there were 113 that that our office filed. Pretrial detention motions are that legal tool that's supposed to give the court the opportunity to determine whether or not there's clear and convincing evidence to detain the person pre-trial. Okay? Now, some people will say, as Mr. Garcia noted, well, the DA is letting everybody out. No. We're the ones going into court trying to say that, no, this guy should be kept in. 72% of our motions were denied. Now, let's take a look at 2023 pretrial motion repeat offenders. There were 105 repeat offenders, and of those, 35 of 105 were arrested again after release. Okay? That is indicative of the failure of this bail reform concept. These are hard numbers. This is not something that is watched by some interest group that might be lobbying for something. No, these are real numbers straight out of our office that have been fastidiously kept by my staff. Okay? These are representing real people. I won't dig down into more of it, but here we go, 2024. We essentially have the same percentages of those motions that have been tendered to the court for consideration and the number that have been denied. But now think about it. Down here, 78 of 92 were arrested again. That's 78 times that an officer had to put themselves at risk. That's 78 people who were subjected to criminal activity that did not need to be, because there was this idea, this overarching idea that pushed bail reform and gave everybody the bait and switch. And underlying that, it's my firm belief, is something that I call the culture of non-accountability. Now, the culture of non-accountability knows no lines. And this is just my term, okay? I didn't steal it from anybody else, but I just thought about it after prosecuting over 26 years and seeing time and time and time again that people don't even get a slap on the wrist, right? It's not an ethnic thing. It's not a social status thing. It's not a language thing. It's not a political left, right, red or blue. It's not a. It is the mindset that a person can do whatever they want, and there are no consequences. And well, you know, they deserve a 37th chance. Well, these are the results. Okay? And then the question is, who pays for that?
Exactly.
Who pays for that? Us. We do. We pay for that. We pay for the failed experiment. I say that, I say it proudly, I'm not going to mince my words. And like I said before, there's good news on the horizon. Okay. So, again, we're talking about the scrutiny of the pretrial release system. I mentioned before that there was focus made by the legislature, and let me share with you some information. Our legislators are not paid. Our legislative sessions shift between a short session that is specifically associated with budgetary issues and a 60-day session that is for everything else. This last short session, 30-day session, 2 senators, one from this district, Senator Joseph Cervantes, and then also Senator Daniel Ivy Soto, they joined together. They created what's called Senate Bill 271. Now, what Senate Bill 271 did is it put the brakes on catch and release. It required the courts to hold a hearing if there is an individual who is out on conditions of release on a felony, and then he's rearrested on another felony. Gee, who'd have thought, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Common sense, But how many years, it's 8 years from the Bail Reform Act, right? How many people have been harmed in the meantime because of a misguided concept, and even worse, a misapplied concept, okay? You have friends, family members, maybe even relatives who have suffered the results of criminal justice reform. I hear it from victims and members of the community all the time. And thank goodness there's relief on the horizon. But Senate Bill 271, please remember that, and thank those legislators for having the courage and tenacity to bring it forward. And also the political acumen to get their other colleagues to get on board, because everybody knows Albuquerque is Dodge City. There's a lot of people I know who refuse to live there. There's a lot of people I know who will not go there unless there are. I'm one of them. Pretrial release. Again, we touched on that, but here's the thing. On May 8th of this year, the Supreme Court issued its ruling. Now, when Senate Bill 271 came out, it was supposed to go into effect yesterday. Literally, May 15th, yesterday, it was supposed to go into effect. The Supreme Court did something rather unique. They didn't wait until May 15th. They went ahead and took action on May 8th. They understand the significance of this. They understand the importance of it, and the fact that that this situation needs to be corrected right now. And so they issued it effective May 8th. Caught all the courts by surprise. How do we implement this? As a matter of fact, we just had a Zoom meeting with our chief judge here in this district, and all of the members of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, myself included, and he was explaining his interpretation of the Supreme Court's order. Make no mistake, Chief Judge Perez said very, very clearly, we got the order, we shall effectuate it. I had already told my staff members, look folks, May 15th, we're going hot. As soon as you go into court, argue it, push it, make the judge have the hearing, and go for it. Do not back up, do not backpedal, right? So one of my intrepid attorneys did just that. And so he got a ruling from one of our magistrate court judges. Now, the magistrate court judge was sort of being judge-like and said, well, we don't have a mechanism, we have not received instruction or guidance on how to implement the Supreme Court's order. Now, my instruction to my folks was the following. When we got the case management rule, July 14, 2023, we didn't get it. It didn't come with any instructions either. It just said do it. We had to figure it out. So, you know what? Keep pressing forward. The courts figure it out. Chief Judge Perea has already been cogitating on that because there's another level that's involved. See, I was just thinking about defendants who had been arrested here and they had bonded out. No, they didn't bond out. They just were released, right? And then they caught another felony. And I was just thinking like that, my little fishbowl. But what the Chief Judge was thinking about is, okay, if you have a guy who was arrested in Tucumcari on a felony, and he shows up in Albuquerque and he's arrested on another felony and he's released, and then he shows up in Las Cruces and he's arrested on another felony, now the Las Cruces court has to hold a hearing to determine if he's going to be released. But that's not the end of the story, because now the Las Cruces court is obligated to tell the court in Albuquerque, which then needs to hold a hearing as well. So they're going to have to hold this guy, transport him all the way to Albuquerque. Then there's going to have to be another hearing in Tucumcari. Okay? Now, does that seem like a waste of resources?
Yes.
Yes. Okay? There may be a way around it, but it's not for me to say. We learned from COVID there's such a thing as virtual hearings. That may be the way around it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the Supreme Court recognized the significance of the issue. And they said, make this happen. Put on your thinking caps keep the community safe. No more of this. No more of this catch and release, okay? We are ordering you that if you have somebody standing before you at your bench, before you let them go, you are obligated to hold another hearing on every case that he has that is pending, okay, in your jurisdiction, and then let the other courts know. That is in the works right now, folks. And I thank Chief Judge Correa for that, and also the Supreme Court, because I've had some things to say about this bail reform thing that isn't necessarily kind, but it's true. Because I go to the crime scenes and see the results of the mayhem that it created. So that's the good news. Yes, ma'am, your question?
So is the information on a felon hard to obtain? I mean, is it automatic that you have access to information like the policeman that he shot and the other crimes that he committed? Is it easy to get that information and have access to all that? On him?
Yes, ma'am. Relatively speaking, I would say, is it easy? Yes. And here's why. There are a number of databases that are available now that were not available whenever I started. There's in courts. There's something called SOPA. Other people call it Odyssey. There are mechanisms that the courts have to be able to push a button and pull up every open active case that defendant has standing in front of them. There's also NCIC, which I'm sure you've probably heard of before, and the police and law enforcement agencies have access to that. Prosecutors have access to that. Also, there are other police intelligence databases that police officers only have access to because there's law enforcement sensitive information that's going on there. And so there are tools available for people to know who these folks are, and so that is all going to be brought to bear. So what I'm saying is we are on the cusp of a new phase. Thank goodness, I believe it's in the right direction. I think that the heart and intention of all of the people in the process who have seen the carnage, it's turned away from that, and now we're going back to something that I would call more associated with common sense.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So, again, serious repeat offenders. One of the things that I want to share with you is my office has been, since the last time we met, we've been in communication with Chief Jeremy Story, Las Cruces Police Department, specifically identifying individuals who are crime generators. And we did also meet with Mr. Garcia, and he brought a lady over who is a business owner, and my office has been looking at the frequency of the incidents that are at her location, and we're analyzing that. We've gotten some additional information from MRDA, we've gotten some additional information from LCPD, and what we're looking at is a mechanism to be able to focus in on that particular individual in a state court as opposed to in municipal court. I understand that municipal court has hired some folks, and the good news about that is that that will allow more action in the municipal courts, if I'm correct on that. Would am I incorrect, sir, about municipal court? Yes, sir.
Oh, I don't deal with the municipal court, I'm just the IG for the city.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, sorry, mischaracterizing.
No, that's fine.
But my understanding is that the municipal court has hired some municipal court attorneys who can work with the police officers to address those cases that are brought into the municipal court for prosecution over there. That's a good step forward. I'll also say that we worked with Chief Story and his staff. We discussed things about their ideas on changing ordinances, modifying, creating new ordinances. We provided them the benefit of our legal feedback on things to give them additional perspective on avenues that they might be able to try, avenues that they could work with their city attorney's office and with their municipal court and with their city council members to be able to create an ordinance. And one of the things that struck us all was something very simple. Shopping carts, right? Right? I contacted Mr. Chris Kohler, who is in charge of the organized retail crime effort in New Mexico. And I'll speak with you a little bit later about another organized crime initiative. But I asked him, what's the cost of a Walmart shopping cart? He did his research, came back, $150. Okay, misdemeanor zone. I was hoping it was like $501, but okay. So, but here's the point, and this came out loud and clear. We as a society, at least in Doñana County, had become anesthetized to the concept of seeing somebody pushing a shopping cart. That, oh, well, that's okay. And it's not okay. The shopping cart does not belong to that person. That person did not buy the shopping cart. It was not loaned to them. It's not rented from Walmart. And since when is it okay for person X to take person Y's property? And frankly, it doesn't matter if the person who is taking it has a residential address or not. The same fundamental truth applies to everyone, right? Don't steal. It's just that simple. And the whole idea is, okay, if a person needs assistance, there are plenty of entities around who can provide that assistance. Let's help them get into that. And I think that the Las Cruces Police Department has done an excellent job in meeting that delicate balance. Treating the person with dignity, but also bringing back the idea that, hey, we got an ongoing crime here, okay? We can't just accept that. I mean, I don't think that there's anybody in here who would appreciate somebody walking up into their garage and taking their lawnmower. I wouldn't. There would be a 911 call. Right? I mean, that's just human life. That's our society. Yes, ma'am.
Just a little bit on that subject. What about, I mean, these people need something to carry their stuff in, right? So couldn't we have couldn't there be some kind of help for them that they can get something and use it legally, and there's a certain criteria for that, and hold them accountable, have them learn how to behave, you know, how to be responsible along with that? I don't know, just an idea.
I think that's an excellent idea. I have seen some individuals, I will tell you that I've seen quite a number of abandoned shopping carts recently, and I have seen some individuals who are using dollies of some kind, another wagon of some type, that are moving what appears to be personal items. I think during the town hall, Chief Story mentioned that, you know, some of these folks have great affection to their stuff. And their stuff, most folks would classify it as not worth having. But nevertheless, each person is a human being and they're entitled to their stuff, right? And I think that the point that you raise is very valid, because we don't want to lose the reality that these are our neighbors. Just because a person is homeless does not make them a criminal. But we need to encourage them and provide tools and mechanisms for them to facilitate themselves in society. And so I think that the question that you raise is very, very poignant. It's very good. I personally do not have an answer to that particular question. It's sort of outside my zone. But I think that there are people who do have authority and responsibility in that area who are working in that vein, because that did come up during our conversation with Chief Story and his staff. So, you know, it's getting good traction. Yes, sir, you had a question?
Direct response to your question. I talked to Chief Story about that quite a bit, on having these grocery carts or some other wagon or something. And I did some research, and other cities have solved the problem by maybe these community of hope, these agencies that help people. They'll get grants and provide wagons to these people. But they should not be using the grocery carts. And so other cities have solved that problem by making sure that these people that need something to carry their stuff have something that is theirs. And it's not a store's or somebody else's. But it can be solved if people will work on it.
Good.
And Chief Story is well aware of these possible solutions.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am, you have a question?
Just a comment, I brought it up at the last city council meeting. In Alberta, Canada, they've solved the problem. Totally solved the problem. You couldn't go to city parks with your children without the needles and feces, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They had the police, they got lots of buses, they had the heaters running, and they invested in plastic tubs. And so whether we think it's junk or just pieces of cardboard, they think it's their stuff. And so they wrote their names on as many tubs as they needed, and they took them to a central processing center, and there it was assessed. Did they need home? Did they need housing? Did they need mental health counseling? Did they need this? Did they need that? And then similar to what Sarah is saying, they tried to do that work program, which obviously I don't think the federal government here would approve because they were in dormitory housing. City of Hope, when the person spoke, the federal government with that money requires that they get individual bedrooms and bathrooms. You may not mandate that they work. You may not mandate that they get mental health counseling. You may not mandate that they get drug counseling. So we have in City of Hope just what we've created, a problem with drugs and alcohol, et cetera. But I think we all need to look at places that have worked successfully. And Alberta, Canada has done that and restored the parks to where the children go out to play and people have received the help that they need. But it takes a concerted effort, but plastic tubs aren't that expensive. That was one of the things they work with.
Good. Thank you. Good. I didn't know about that. That's excellent. So, let me move on here real quick. Okay, case management rule, and we have pretty much covered that. So let me go through a few more things concerning the case management rule and grand juries. The ability of prosecutors to take a case to grand jury is under attack ferociously in this district. I can tell you that I've been defending our right to do that ferociously in this district. There's a case on point called State versus Peebler, which says that it is the discretion of the district attorney, whoever that person may be, to decide which way the case is going to be prosecuted. And I'm constantly resisting all of the arguments from the defense bar and anybody else in the court system who says that grand juries are ineffective or we indict ham sandwiches or whatever else like that. What they will not tell you is that preliminary hearings are time intensive, they're resource intensive, and you also have to have enough courtrooms and recording equipment, court personnel, and everything else like that. And most importantly, something that all of the well-wishers and everything just will not touch is something called a clock and a calendar. Okay? There's only 8 hours in the day, 5 days in the week. And everybody who's going to sell you a bunch of hooey that, oh, you can do 5 preliminary hearings in the morning. No, I've worked in preliminary jurisdictions. That ain't happening. Okay? Not if you do a serious, if you do a back-to-back armed robbery, followed by a kidnap, followed by a CSP, you are not doing 5 preliminary hearings in that day. But you can do 15 of them with grand jury. And what is the purpose of it after all? It's to find probable cause. It's not guilt beyond reasonable doubt. It's just probable cause. And what is probable cause? That a crime happened and this guy did it. That's it. So we're consistently pushing back on that. As long as I'm district attorney, it'll be the district attorney who decides what method of prosecution is going to be used. Because the legislature, the courts, everybody long before I was here, because the Peter case was 75, I was a junior in high school. So, they decided long before I got here what standard was. So I'm gonna hold that standard. So, during the town hall put on by LCPD, those of you who attended may have seen this slide. This is important and this is pointed, and here's why. My favorite little pointer, I love toys. Same playbook, same result. What do we mean by that? What we mean by that is this. 2017, the New Mexico Supreme Court issued its case management order, applied in Albuquerque. 8,000 cases dismissed, mayhem ensued. This document was submitted by the Albuquerque District Attorney's Office, then led by District Attorney Raul Torres. It was submitted to the legislature. They were requesting the legislature consider statutory fixes to the case management order that was imposing all of these standards that truncated times and shoehorned discovery processes to the detriment of the state and ultimately resulting in the dismissal of thousands of cases. One of the things that you hear frequently around here from other folks is this word dismissal. We've had discussions about that before. What does dismissal mean? Who dismisses them? Yes, a district attorney can dismiss a case for a number of different reasons. But in this context, I'm here to tell you that on June 14, 2023, when the case management rule for this district was implemented and our local district courts overnight dismissed over 550 cases, that was not a dismissal initiated by the district attorney's office. That is not a case that was dismissed because we somehow, we don't have any evidence, our witness doesn't want to testify, or whatever. That was not that. So a lot of times there's smoke and mirrors about dismissals, what it means, who does it. But I share that with you so that it's very, very clear. The result is the same. Has anybody heard from any of those people who were victims of those crimes that got dismissed, right? Where's their voice in all of this? Whenever it happened in this jurisdiction, I immediately wrote a letter. It was published in the Las Cruces Sun News. I wrote a letter to everybody who was a victim of a crime whose case got dismissed because of this action. Did I like it? Did I like the fact that the cases were dismissed? No. Was it within the law? Yeah. That's why we fought back and we went over every last case to see how many that we could bring back and prosecute. And we have done so, and I can tell you that we've refiled at least 330 cases. Thank you, sir. Re-indicting them, more testimony, more discovery. We had to do it all over again. Just because of an administrative procedure, but that's the law. Here's another issue, the revolving door of incompetency. Incompetency is a major issue in our state. We do not have enough resources. You talk to anybody in the system, and they will tell you that there are not enough resources. And that is true, and I see this lady shaking her head, and it is an absolute shame. It's a stain on the state of New Mexico that we're sitting on multiple billions of dollars, and we don't have the wherewithal to be able to find a way to apply some of those resources in such a manner as to provide even one more facility for those people who desperately need mental health services. Okay? I'm not here to badmouth folks who have mental health issues, because those folks are human beings. They deserve our care, compassion, concern, and whatever society can provide to help them through their situation. Right? Even if it's mental health issues that are induced from years and years of voluntary use of narcotics, even so, they still deserve to be treated like human beings, because this is America. Right? That's right. But unfortunately, our system has not seen fit to do so. Here's the good news. What our office did is, we need to fast forward to another slide. Yes. March 29th of this year, we met with the Peak, right, Sherry? runs that organization. And the PEAP provides mental health services for a number of individuals. We spoke with him about what options might be available. Because what I wanted to do is to create a method within my office to be able to at least provide services to people so that after them being under the jurisdiction of the court is over, they would at least know where to go to. They would at least have made that contact. They would at least have muscle memory, as it were, on where to go to get help. Mr. Cherry entertained our request. We sat down and we arrived at an agreement where if a person presented to our office with some type of verifiable mental health history, that he's not dodging, he's not malingering, he's not, that something, a family member says, hey, my son has got mental health, we've been trying to get him help for years, or whatever. Okay, let's admit this person to what we call pre-prosecution diversion. This is a diversion program that allows that the district attorney themselves only operates. Let that person go through that process. No, I'm not talking about murders and all that kind of stuff, but I'm just talking about somebody who seems to always be stealing cars or something like that, right? Get them into a situation to where they can be properly medicated and monitored. And the taking of their medication can be monitored. And they can be helped and stabilized. We also took a look at what can we do for more serious offenses, people who commit violent offenses. And we initiated a process within our office that if a person is going to be claiming he's incompetent to stand trial, very first thing that we're going to do is we're not going to stipulate to his past mental health evaluation. We're going to demand that he go and get another mental health evaluation by a psychiatrist or psychologist, even if the last one is only 30 days old. And you might say, well, 30 days, that's pretty crazy. Because whenever I talk to my favorite forensic psychologist, I said, hey, what about 6 months? He says, no. What about 90 days? No. It's 30 days. I said, why? He said, because usually what happens is a person will start to decompensate whenever they're not taking their medication and then they're out of that safe environment. And then you will need another evaluation within 30 days to assess the reality of where that person is. And then once you have that valid assessment again, then you're able to go forward. You're able to determine if the person is really not competent and needs to be treated to competency, which is a legal pathway, or if the person is malingering, or if they're, and you just need to hammer them at that point, right? There are all different types of things like that. And so we're trying to take a holistic approach. Here's more good news. Recently, it was learned that Mr. Cherry and his organization, the PEAP, was able to secure the Crisis Triage Center to provide services for individuals. And as we all know, the Crisis Triage Center has been the subject of a lot of controversy. But here's the difference. Instead, before, the Crisis Triage Center could only take people who wanted to be there. So the cops would load them up in the car, they'd take them over there and say, I don't want to be here. No, they're gone back out the street, they would get arrested another hour and a half later, right? No. This one, you can take and they can get involuntary commitments. And then they can be looked at by a doctor. And then their situation can be assessed. And then there are tools and there are remedies and treatments and therapies and things that might be available to them. They can get on track. They can be stabilized. And we owe that to that gentleman for having the foresight to be able to even push forward that idea. Okay? So that's very good news for our organization. Now, border prosecution team. In 2000, recently you may have seen something on the news about our office initiating prosecution with the U.S. Border Patrol. Some people may say, well, it's done better. Back in 2022, we had a vision about prosecuting border-related crimes. we reached out to Senator Barbenheimer's office for assistance on getting a grant. We received $300,000 to stand up what's called a border prosecution team. And that $300,000 was to staff an attorney, a victim advocate, an investigator, and so on. All the infrastructure that's necessary to handle border-related crimes. I didn't come up with this idea myself. I stole it, I'll admit, from Texas, where I was prosecuting in Del Rio as a border prosecution unit prosecutor. And that idea was administered, and Governor Rick Perry was running it whenever I was over in Texas, and it worked because we were handling cartel business over there like nobody's business. And there's a whole lot of border crime, and I'll get into some of that here in a little bit. But that was the genesis of the idea, and so we brought it to Las Cruces, New Mexico. There's no other jurisdiction in New Mexico that has this right now. And in 2024, as you can see, we initiated a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Border Patrol. We'll get into a little bit more detail on that, but let me give you the outline of how that worked. Border Patrol agents were concerned that not all of their cases were being able to be prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Keep in mind, the U.S. Attorney's Office handles federal crime. They are the only ones that have jurisdiction to handle immigration. My office does not have anything to do with immigration. The U.S. Attorney's Office has jurisdiction to handle federal crimes as well, and that's the way it should be. They also have limited resources like everybody else, and so they have case acceptance criteria. And if the facts of the case do not rise to a certain level that their attorneys can take without overloading themselves, then they have to reject it. Well, what happens to that crime? And so the Border Patrol agents were perplexed about that, and they came to me and said, well, can you do something? I said, let's talk. So we sat down and we got our head around the parameters of it. Come to find out that, yes, these offenses happen on New Mexico land. State jurisdiction. Crime, criminal activity that is definable by the statutes of the state of New Mexico. Bingo, light goes off, said, I think it is. So we worked out a memorandum of understanding, and we went through the parameters of that, and I will show you some of them now. This is the front page of our MOU. It's unique. It's the first of its kind in this state. It's never been done before. As a matter of fact, State Senator Crystal Diamond Brantley thought so much of it that she sent out a Facebook post praising the decision of my office to take this unique step and encouraging other district attorneys in this state to do the same. And here's the thing. This is not a red issue or a blue issue. This is a human issue. That's what I said out there by Mount Cristo Rey with the U.S. Border Patrol whenever they were talking about public safety. Folks, there are 137 people who died in the desert last year in this county. Nobody knew about it.
In Doñana County?
In Doñana County, 137 people died in the desert. Many of them within 100 feet of a rescue depot. These people had trekked from God knows where.
How come we didn't hear about that?
Thank you, that's my point. You got it. That's the point. That's what the Border Patrol came to me with. That's what they came to me with, and they said, help us. We gotta do something. Summer's coming. There's an onslaught of more people. We need to get the word out that it is unsafe to be crossing the border in the desert like this. This is what touched my heart. One of the Border Patrol supervisory agents told me, he said, yeah, you know, we're out there cutting sign, watching for footprints and so on. He said, yeah, then you'll see several little footprints. Now, we all know what that means. little kids in the desert. And so they wanted to do something about it. What they wanted to do was send a message to the smugglers that Santa Teresa, Doña County, is not the place to bring your smuggling business, okay? To try to push all of that someplace else. I've been up in a helicopter with U.S. Border Patrol to take a look at our border. I should have put it in the well, maybe next time we can add it in the PowerPoint to show you some footage. But here's the thing. On the Texas side, about every 500 feet, you've got a DPS trooper car. Then you've got Border Patrol. Then you've got other law enforcement. Then you've got DOD. Then you've got National Guard. Then you've got, on the New Mexico side, you have U.S. Border Patrol. That's it. Okay. There are places in the fence where holes have been cut. There are places where you see the tire marks of the vehicles drive up, the footprints stop. Right? All out there in the desert. All of this is going on. There are also situations where officers are being assaulted in the desert. I did an interview with Fox News, and I spoke with the photojournalist who was doing the interview after we were off the camera. He said he's been covering border issues for the last 10 years. He said he's been everywhere from down by Brownsville all the way around border up to here now. I said, oh, you've been in it? He said, yes, I have. I said, you know what happened to me? He said, no. He said, well, they were up that over at Mount Cristo Rey and they were filming. I said, okay, that's what you do. So, he says, they saw a group of 8 come across. Then that group split into 4. They saw a Corvette, and then they saw a Mazda drive up. 4 went over to the Corvette, can't get in there, they go over to the Mazda. Okay, they drive off. Then the photojournalist hears, stop filming us. He sort of says, stop filming us. And then the voice says, stop filming us or we'll kill you. I said, oh, that breaks my ears. I said, you heard that before? He said, no. I said, what does that mean to you? He said, it means that the situation is escalating. Okay. If you look at the statistics on the other side of the border of the number of journalists who have been murdered in the last 10 years, now we put 2 and 2 together and we start to see what we're looking at. Okay? This is leading someplace, folks. Because one of the things that we want to talk about is 55 stash houses that were found in Doña County last year. 55. There were 137 people who died in the desert. There's not 137 people here. Okay? 55 people died in 55 stash houses. Now, I spoke with District Attorney Hicks, my El Paso counterpart. They have a very, very robust penal code that deals specifically with human smuggling, human trafficking, all of those types of things. New Mexico has only one statute. Right now, I've been in communication with members of the Legislative Leadership Organization, political reasons and all this other kind of stuff. I didn't get clearance from them to tell you who they are or whatever, but to try to help create laws in the state of New Mexico that are going to be focusing on anti-gangs as well as anti-smuggling to a significant degree. Now, here's what. What happens in the stash houses, we're talking about people being treated as property. People being treated like they're a box of shoes. Okay? The cartels have gone from making money by using narcotic sales to the other commodity, human beings. This is what do we used to call it today? Polite company, So I won't go into the details of what happened at a stash house, or what I have been told has happened at some stash houses that police have raided. But let me just say that there can be a number of additional crimes that could be investigated in those situations, and it's not just taking a person from hate. The other part is the gotaways. El Paso sector, Arizona sector, saturated with agents. Santa Teresa sector, very few agents. It's a weak point. So where do people flood? Right here. So if you hear about people being apprehended and there's a low apprehension rate here, that does not mean that there are not a lot of people going through. It just means that there's not a lot of people getting caught, right? And that's because Texas has ramped up its legal system. Arizona has ramped up its legal system. And so the weak point is New Mexico, so everybody comes funneling in here. Okay? And so one of the things that we want to keep in mind is what is happening to the folks. Well, minors are being co-opted to be drivers for loads of human beings. They run off from law enforcement at high speed, put themselves and everybody at risk. They can be extorted. There can be all other types of assorted crimes that our young people are coerced into. Because once they get their tentacles in, they're not going to let them go. These are some of the, yes ma'am.
Does the governor, is she aware of this? Oh, no. Oh, no, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mean.
It is a very valid question, and the question for all those was, is the governor aware of this? Well, ma'am, all I can say is there are a number. The information that I'm getting is coming from solid sources, law enforcement sources, and we have the Department of Public Safety, we have different law enforcement agencies, and we have emergency management, and I'm sure that they talk. So to answer your question specifically, I don't have the answer to that question, but more generally, anecdotally, I would think that the information that I'm sharing with you is available to all. And that's why I'm bringing it to you, so that you have the opportunity to see and understand what it is that our agents are facing in the field, what it is that our law enforcement officers are facing on the street. Because remember, keep in mind what I said before, the most dangerous person a law enforcement officer can encounter is somebody who knows that they've already committed a serious crime and now they're being approached by a cop. Well, if somebody's in the process of smuggling other human beings or doing bad things to them, that person is now going to have that dangerous mindset. And so that's what I mean when I say this is a public safety issue, right? And so let's take a look at some of these potential crimes that we're looking at. Accidents involving death or personal injuries, battery on a peace officer, child abandonment, child abuse. You're trekking across the desert, you're leading a group of people, including a small minor child, just putting that child in a zone of danger, right? That's a state crime. That's not immigration. That's a state crime. That's where we're going. Criminal solicitation, false imprisonment, holding somebody against their will to perform whatever kind of acts they need to perform to work off their debt. That's a state crime. That's not immigration. Okay?
What is false imprisonment?
What is false imprisonment? That is intentionally holding somebody against their will, knowing you don't have the authority to do so. For example, if you wanted to leave this room and somebody else said no, they locked the door, you're not going to be able to leave. That's fourth degree felony false imprisonment. Yes, sir.
When you capture these, so we're talking about the coyotes that are smuggling these folks through, correct?
Yes,
When you capture them, are they American citizens? Americans that come, that are doing the smuggling?
The question was, these individuals who are captured, are they American citizens or are they non-US citizens who are doing the smuggling? Well, let me answer your question this way. Since we started this border prosecution initiative with the US Border Patrol, I saw somebody make an anecdotal comment on Senator Brantley's Facebook page saying, Byers is just running for re-election. He's not going to prosecute anybody. Guess what? We already have our first case. And you know what? Yeah, we'll prosecute him. And also, that individual is a U.S. citizen. That gives the totality of the flavor of what it is that we're dealing with here on these border crimes. Are we exempting non-U.S. citizens from prosecution? Absolutely not. But one of the key things to keep in mind about what it is that we're doing with this initiative to try to keep everybody safe is we are only taking those cases that the U.S. Attorney's Office has rejected or declined to prosecute. The U.S. Attorney's Office has absolutely wonderful resources and capabilities to prosecute individuals who are non-U.S. citizens. International extradition, things like that, those types of things that if we were to get involved in that, we'd have to go up through the AG's office. The AG's office has a particular individual that handles international extradition, then they got to go to some office in DC, and then they got to go through DOJ and all this other kind of stuff. U.S. Attorney's Office got a straight shot. Yes, sir.
So, this gentleman that you're going to prosecute, that the American is an American citizen, is he also a cartel member?
Pending litigation, pending investigation, and law enforcement says that it can get it.
Okay. Because I'm just wondering if, well, okay. Thank you.
You're the IG, you know.
So what about drugs? I don't see drug trafficking is.
Well, that's because when we made the slide for the PowerPoint presentation, the actual MOU has like an entire page full.
Yeah.
And it is not limited to just what you see. Of course, if there's homicide there, go. Yeah, we do homicide. So yeah, it's more complex.
Okay.
Yes,
Are you
ma'am.
catching any kickback from Homeland Security over any efforts that you're making in this?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
They're
I
not
spoke
giving you any
face-to-face.
issues on that?
Yeah, the question was, am I getting any kickback from Homeland Security over this? And I can tell you unequivocally, no, because I've spoken with Alexander Byers, who is the U.S. Attorney for the District of New Mexico. He welcomes this endeavor. He welcomes this partnership. That is fabulous. I've spoken to the leadership and the entire chain of command. Border Patrol Supervisor Good, who is in charge of the District of New Mexico, and they're behind it 100%. As a matter of fact, one of my agents got some anecdotal information back from way out in the Boogie that the agents out there had learned that we are taking Border Patrol cases. They are ecstatic. And that's good because they are on the front lines every day and they're helping to save people. Because see, folks, one of the things that people don't realize is that Border Patrol agents are out there in the middle of the desert rescuing people left and right. Okay? What people don't know is that there's scouts out there for the other side. There are people taking shots at folks. It's not an easy ride out
Like
there.
a war zone.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. And so, this is very, very serious. It's very delicate. But I wanted to share with you that I personally believe it's high time for the state of New Mexico to get involved in our own public safety and not just rely on the federal government. Yes, sir.
I'm curious what the human trafficking, you may have this in other parts of your statutes, but is there any situation where you have a human trafficking element that kicks back up to a WECO situation?
Understood. You know your law. Let me answer it this way. When I spoke with the leader of the Republican leadership, the chairman of the Republican Leadership Committee, Mr. Torres Benson, I believe, they'd asked me to review some legislation. I did. I poached from Texas and engaging in organized criminal activity statute, 71.02. In there it has a definition of gangs. That definition of gangs was taken and placed into the New Mexico RICO statute, which now broadens the scope of the applicability of the New Mexico RICO statute, and it gives all prosecuting agencies throughout the state a lot more clout, a lot more bite. And so, absolutely right. That's the theory behind it, and I'm still working on more. Awesome. Next question, yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question. There's ranchers along the
Yes.
border, people in their private property.
They have private property there.
Ranchers and private property.
Yeah, and if they get hurt, are they able to, like, defend themselves and,
If there's no trespassing
they're
posted.
trespassing?
Yes, a person can be arrested for trespassing on private property, yeah, posted on all of that, yes, that is actionable. And we did discuss that with the ordinance one.
Oh, okay, got it.
Right. Okay, next line. All righty, dedication to victims' rights. I'm going to share some information with you as much as I possibly can, because this matter is under litigation right now, and what I'm going to share with you is nothing secret, nothing that is prohibited by any rules of professional conduct that I'm aware of, or any procedural rules. I preface this by saying that any defendant has a right to a fair trial, this, that, and every kind of stuff that you're all familiar with. But here's the thing. There was there was a Las Cruces school teacher, last name Howard. He entered a guilty plea, and he was placed on probation. What he pled guilty to was a crime of criminal sexual contact of a minor. That definition, by pleading guilty under the statute, that creates the status as a sex offender. This gets very, very finely diced under the law, and I'm just going right now off of memory of the content of the memo, or the motion that I filed to reinstate his probation, so he's got to do the remainder of his 5 years. But nevertheless, he was put on probation, and then about a little bit after he had served half of his time, his attorney filed a motion to terminate his probation early. That motion was heard by one of our district court judges, and it was granted. At the time of that hearing, the hearing was, notice for the hearing was sent out on March 19th. The hearing was set for March 21st. That provides essentially 2 working days, roughly 16 hours in actual time, to be able to notify the victims. The victims have a constitutional right to be present at any hearing that the defendant has a right to be present at. That short period of time did not permit my office the ability to notify the victims in a timely manner. There is another safeguard that had been put in place by the New Mexico legislature to ensure that the victims' rights were upheld. That safeguard, I believe, is found in section 31-26-10.1, and what it does is it requires the court to inquire on the record as to whether or not the Victims' Rights Act has been complied with. And the reason that that statute exists is so that then the court can be informed as to whether or not the victims have been informed of their right to be present at the hearing. And if they're not, if they haven't been, okay, then we can take recess, we can continue it, we can get the victims here so that then they can be heard, or we can determine that, the victim is out of the country on vacation, or the victim has passed away, or whatever the situation may be. But that safeguard is there in the statutes so that the victim's rights will be effectuated. Because what is a right without an ability to enforce it, right? Well, that colloquy did not happen. So, the court issued the order terminating the individual's probation. This happened shortly after there was a verdict in a trial in federal court at which those same victims were awarded $44 million. Now, the two venues have nothing to do with one another procedurally, right? But the most important thing is that under the state law, what happened here was that the victim's rights were violated. So, we spoke with Attorney General Torres, his office, and what resulted is that the Attorney General decided to file a writ of superintending control, having the Supreme Court order the local court to put this defendant back on probation so that he must finish his remainder of his 5-year probationary period. Simultaneously, I drafted a motion to reinstate the defendant's probation for the same reasons. Because under the statute, the 5-year probationary period as a sex offender is mandatory. And so the victims were two things. The law was not complied with and the victim's rights were violated. That's why we had Attorney General Torres come here and we did a joint press conference, and those of y'all who watched the news saw exactly what went down. I can share with you now that today there was some filings. The court filed its response, and shortly before the court filed its response, the New Mexico Supreme Court filed an order staying all proceedings. So basically, what that means is that everything stops until the Supreme Court has had an opportunity to hear from the parties and make its determination on what the law means, what the law says, and how it's going to be applied in this case. Attorney General Torres' office is on the wavelength that sex offender probation is mandatory and requires full 5 years to be served. I'm on that same wavelength. We joined forces, and in that press conference, Attorney General Torres explained his experience as a line prosecutor handling sex offender cases and reading a judge before when he was a prosecutor in Rio Rancho. I explained my experience on prosecuting a sexual homicidal murderer, Dominic Akers, in Albuquerque in 2004, which gave rise to Marissa's Law, which then morphed into requirements for sex offender notification. And that's why I said that we too have been battling sex offenders and battling for victims' rights for over 2 decades. So you got two salty prosecutors who are going after the same issue. And I'm sure that he is just as dedicated to it as I am. Yes, ma'am.
Are the courts really backed up in this community?
Are they backed up?
Yeah.
You betcha. They are.
Are we trying to hire more?
Let me share with you what I heard from then Chief Justice Arrieta. This was a couple of years ago. Mr. COVID didn't help us at all, right? But every year there's a legislative session. Every year our courts, a representative of our courts goes up to the legislature and they ask for funding to make their operation run. I don't know the statistics, I can't speak for the courts, but it's my firm belief that they have been sincere about requesting more judges and more staff. In the times whenever I have made a budget presentation for my own office before the legislature, I have taken the additional step to request more judges and more staff for judges, and frankly, more public defenders, as well as more prosecutors, because we need them. Did we get any? No.
Are we like stepchildren down here?
Yes. And like I said, No smoke and mirrors here, folks. It's just straight up truth. No excuses. We're southbound currently. Everybody knows that if you're southbound currently, that's like being the last one in line at dinner.
Did the district attorney's office need to be prompted by the defense attorneys to pursue this Driggers abomination that he did? I'll just say it. Or did you voluntarily jump on that and go right to the Attorney General?
Well, let's put it this way. And I appreciate your question. It's all a matter of perspective of did we need to be prompted or did we, or whatever. Here's the thing. And again, this is not excuse time. This is just be real. If a case is prosecuted and it's resolved, we move to the next case. If a defendant is on probation and he is, he comes up for, he's violated probation, he comes back on our radar. If he does not violate probation, we keep going because we just have to. Now, what I will share with you, and I alluded to this earlier, is whenever I said this gets finely diced, it's the definition of what a sex offender is. Because when in one statute a person is a sex offender, but in another statute he's not. In one statute, a person pleads guilty and gets a suspended sentence, and now he has to wear an ankle monitor, or he has to go to sex offender registration and on the websites and all this other kind of stuff. If he gets a conditional discharge, he's not. That's odd, right? But that's the law. And so there are all of those things that go into this particular situation. But to come back to your original question, let me share this with you. Hold on. Okay. Well, the reason I pause is because it goes into work product, it goes into professional conversations, it goes into a lot of other things. I think it's fair to say across the board that whenever a prosecutor learns that there's been a violation of the law or that there's been an injustice, no prodding is needed. No prodding is needed. I filed a motion, I drafted it myself, I signed it myself, and you know what? We got to go in that same courtroom, and it doesn't matter to me, because my mission, my purpose is to uphold the law. And it appears that there's been a violation of that. It appears that the Attorney General agrees. And so we're now going to wait to see what the Supreme Court orders after they receive their the information that they need to make their decision on. But I can guarantee you that the Attorney General's office and my office are in lockstep on what justice requires in this.
Thank you. I was very impressed with the Attorney General. You know, we always vote on these judges, and when those names are on there as a judge, and I can say, speak for myself, we have no clue of what their decisions have been. So what is a good way, what recourse do we have as citizens to file specific complaints against individual judges? And is it publicly reviewable prior to elections?
I see. Let me answer the question this way. Professional organizations which have a licensure procedure will usually have some type of review process to, like for example, medical doctors. If a doctor has a history of issues, then there's a medical board to deal with that. Attorneys, if there's an issue with an attorney taking client money and not performing, then there's a disciplinary board for that. For judges, there's a Judicial Standards Commission. You may, I believe you can access that either just a straight Google or go to the New Mexico Supreme Court website, nmcourts.gov, And I believe that would provide a starting point for you to be able to have your voice heard in those situations. And, you know, I'm not advocating that people do that, but I think you ask a very fair question, because I'm an elected official, and elected officials should be accountable. Judges are elected officials. There's a mechanism. You're asking for how do I access that mechanism? So, yeah. Thank you. Sure, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Has he since registered as a sex offender?
Has what?
Has he since registered as a sex offender?
No, ma'am. The question was, has he, meaning Mr. Howard, since registered as a sex offender? And the answer is no. And the reason for that is that the nature of his sentence, as it were, it's not even actually a sentence, but the nature of that order from the court is a conditional discharge. And it's been determined under the law that a person who receives a conditional discharge for having pled guilty to one of those offenses does not have to register as a sex offender. Does it make any sense? Well, what he said, no, it doesn't. But in the legal world, this is what I mean. It's like you can be 6 microns thin, and you're over here. But if you're 6 microns the other direction, then you're over there. And that is where, you know, things get split. You have to follow them.
Yes. Do you know his attorney? Defended him?
What was the
It's a
question?
matter of record, and the question is who defended him? Him being Mr. Howard, and the attorney who represented Mr. Howard at the change of plea setting was James Darnell, out of El Paso. He's a licensed New Mexico attorney as well. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, DA Byers, I've got a question / comment, and I'd like your input as I make this. I'm going to switch to a previous topic you touched on in your slide concerning competency.
Yes.
And what I believe is failing society, okay? But in that frame, I'm going to just make a comment and ask you a question concerning something that happened recently here that it still hurts us. Well, it bothers me because I'm very much pro law enforcement. One of our law enforcement officers recently got brutally murdered by a career criminal with a mental illness, okay? And I think you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Okay. And now there's been some movement, I want to say, towards the right in our city council, okay? And I'm speaking still with regards to this competency stipulation that we have in our legal system.
Yes.
Okay, what I'm getting at is this. Who dropped the ball on that? What is your take on what happened to our officer Hernandez? And basically, where does the fault lie? And are we doing enough about it to make a meaningful impact in our society?
Very fair question.
Basically, who dropped the ball?
Okay. I wish that the answer was as straightforward as the question. There are a number of moving parts. There are a number of reasons why. But let me share with you what I perceive of that. Law enforcement is not permitted to keep a list, as it were, of individuals who have mental health issues. I spoke with the killer's mother. She called my office after he was killed, after he killed Officer Hernandez. And she explained to me that she was broken and torn because of what her son had done and the life that was lost because of her son. But also, the lady worked in the mental health field, and she had been trying to help her son for many years. And no resources, right? So, Officer Hernandez approached the gentleman for a routine vagrant call. You saw the video. No aggression there. I flipped out. So these are the kinds of challenges that our officers face. Who dropped the ball? I can't say. And I appreciate your question. I wish I had the specific answer to say that person did it. But there are so many moving parts in this that would be not just inaccurate, but just morally unfair to whoever. I think that there are a lot of moving parts. But what I will say this is that to me, and I think to you as well, Officer Hernandez's loss puts a fine point on the necessity for immediate mental health resources right here, right now. We cannot have another one of those. Because here's the other thing. The individual who tried to save Officer Hernandez and ended up killing his murderer, if he had not been armed, then what? He'd have been next. Because that was part of the scenario that actually played out there. And so they're out there. Sir, they are out there. And our brave men and women, and I don't throw that around just like, oh, no, brave men and women. No, that's real. Okay? They put themselves on the line there between them and us. I've had my life threatened in this job recently, last year, October. And a few times before that. Those folks did not have mental health issues. So what I'm saying is that if there's something that I could request of you, is when you have the opportunity to speak with other people, to encourage legislators, counselors, council members, county commission members, encourage them to support every effort to bring mental health resources to our community, because it has to start somewhere. And I think that you're a man of goodwill, good heart. You understand it. And if they hear from more people like that, who, one, don't want to be next, don't want their neighbor to be next, and want to get help for the person who's suffering under that, then I think we can make some good progress. But it has to start somewhere. And that's one of the things whenever I have an opportunity to speak with our elected representatives, I try to stress that and work with people. So I thank you for the question.
Can I just ask you a follow-up question?
Yes, sir.
What do you think of the competency statute as it stands right now in our local legal system?
Antiquated, outdated, needs revamping, and it needs to be integrated into something that is modernized, something that is going to be effective, something that's going to be fast, something that's going to respect people's rights, going to require medication, and that is going to require monitoring to make sure that the medication is maintained. We need to have to stop the hands-off approach to mental health treatment. I'm not saying that people should be heavy-handed and so on and so forth. I think that we should hear from the professionals in the field, the folks who work with these folks every day, and they see them from the dangerous side, they also see them from the human side. So yeah, I think that's my thoughts.
Mr. Byers, I hate to interrupt you. But once again, like we did last time, I mean, we could probably listen to you for another couple of hours. So what we will do is we will invite you once again. Hopefully you will join us and continue. Is there any last comments that you wish to share before we wrap it up?
The only thing that I'm about to say is I thank you, as always, you're a very attentive group, great questions, great concern, very, very poignant, very, engaging. Please keep doing what you're doing. Please keep engaging with our community leaders, getting the word out, bringing these issues to our commission, to our city council, to your legislators. Be a voice. I wish that you guys could be cloned and people from all different, perspectives would be active and as engaged as you are, because that's what makes our community better. So, and I thank you. You always receive me graciously, and I really thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you coming, and we'll see you next week.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Laura. I run Mr. Byers' campaign. I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, Mr. Byers is one of the most ethical people I've ever met, which is why I'm working with him, because I don't do that anymore. I retired from that like 3 years ago. He said to me, no campaign stuff in the county. So I'll be across the street at Bus Mariachis. If anybody would like to know more, he will be with me if you would like to talk to him about the campaign. If you have other questions, he will be with us. There's fundraisers, donations, and we have a few signs. But we are in the campaign. We'd like to keep the work going. And he did give me permission to tell you all that we'd be across the street. Have a good night. Thank you for all your hard work. And you know what, Juan? Thank you as always.